Luigi Mangione, the 26-year-old accused of fatally shooting the United Healthcare CEO in New York.
Luigi Mangione was escorted into a New York courtroom in a bulletproof vest, handcuffs, and shackles.
Mangione developing somewhat of a fan club, with dozens showing up for court.
Outside his latest hearing, supporters of the accused lined up hoping to catch a glimpse.
He already has a lot of support.
Stop denying! Luigi! Luigi!
The courtroom was tense. All eyes were on Luigi Mangione, the young man accused of the shocking murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. The trial had captivated the nation, not just because of the crime itself, but because of the deeper implications it carried. How did a former valedictorian, an elite private school graduate.
Luigi came from a wealthy background, was the valedictorian in his high school, and attended an Ivy League university.
Find himself at the center of a high-profile murder case with multiple jurisdictions pursuing him. What was the true story behind the allegations that he had planned and executed the assassination of one of the most powerful healthcare executives in America? Authorities say that on the morning of December 4th, 2024, as Thompson was preparing to attend an investors' conference in Midtown Manhattan, he was ambushed outside the Hilton Hotel.
United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
The 50-year-old was fatally shot early Wednesday morning as he was walking toward a Midtown hotel to attend a conference.
Surveillance footage showed a hooded figure allegedly firing a single fatal shot into Thompson's back before fleeing the scene. The police quickly released surveillance images, piecing together the suspect's escape route through the city, eventually identifying Mangione as the primary suspect.
New York police and prosecutors finally have their suspect, and now they shift to building their case against Luigi Mangione.
His arrest came a week later in a Pennsylvania McDonald's, marking the end of an intense nationwide manhunt.
Police arrested a man as he sat and ate his breakfast at a McDonald's. Police are at this hour questioning 26-year-old Luigi Mangione after arresting him in Altoona, Pennsylvania.
But the case was far from over. The evidence against him was overwhelming.
Tons of evidence found on this man, Luigi Mangione.
With prosecutors presenting images, witness statements, and even journal entries allegedly written by Mangione himself in which he expressed disdain for the healthcare industry. Some of these writings, authorities claimed, pointed to a premeditated act driven by a belief that the healthcare system was corrupt and unjust. But was it really that simple? In the months that followed, as the trial moved forward, the courtroom became a battleground for two starkly different narratives. Prosecutors painted Mangione as a calculated killer.
The New York Police Department says he was targeted in a pre-planned attack.
Someone who meticulously planned the murder of Brian Thompson as an act of vengeance against the industry he despised. Meanwhile, the defense argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that the media frenzy surrounding the case had already tainted the public's perception, and that Mangione was being unjustly vilified. Adding to the complexity was the sheer number of legal battles Mangione faced. He was being tried in 3 separate jurisdictions: New York State, Pennsylvania, and federal court.
Luigi Mangione remains in federal custody, where he is being prosecuted in 3 jurisdictions by the federal government, by New York State, and by Altoona, Pennsylvania.
Each case brought its own unique challenges, from debates over evidence admissibility to whether the federal government would seek the death penalty. As Mangione made his latest court appearance, emotions ran high. Supporters had gathered outside the Manhattan Criminal Courthouse, holding signs that read, "Free Luigi," and "Healthcare is a human right."
Luigi! Free! Luigi! Free! Luigi!
Mangione developing somewhat of a fan club, with dozens showing up for court. Other supporters holding up signs reading "People over profits." The case becoming a referendum on the healthcare industry.
Some of them even wore shirts emblazoned with his name. To them, Mangione was not a murderer, he was a symbol of frustration, a man who had allegedly taken matters into his own hands in a system that had failed millions. Inside the courtroom, Mangione entered wearing a green sweater and what appeared to be a protective vest, escorted by an unusually large security detail. His defense attorney, Karen Friedman Agnifilo, immediately raised objections to the way he was being treated.
But for whatever reason, here, despite all the law enforcement, they need him to be wearing this vest. They need him to be shackled, and they stand right over us, and we get no time with him. So he is being treated differently because of this unusual.
She argued that keeping him shackled in court undermined his presumption of innocence, creating a bias against him. The judge, however, ruled that security concerns justified the restraints. The biggest argument of the day came over discovery. The defense claimed they had yet to receive crucial police reports and investigative documents, implying that the prosecution was withholding evidence. They also hinted at constitutional violations in how Mangione was arrested in Pennsylvania, questioning whether key pieces of evidence, such as the ghost gun allegedly found in his possession, were obtained legally. Another unexpected turn came when the defense brought up a newly released documentary about the case, produced by Law and Crime and aired on Investigation Discovery. Agnifilo criticized the NYPD and New York City Mayor Eric Adams for participating in televised interviews discussing the case, arguing that their comments could prejudice the jury pool and violate Mangione's right to a fair trial. The defense even claimed that evidence discussed in the documentary had not been officially turned over to them yet. Meanwhile, Mangione's federal case remained in limbo. Prosecutors had filed a criminal complaint against him, but an official indictment had yet to be issued. Experts speculated that federal prosecutors were weighing whether to seek the death penalty, a decision that could dramatically alter the trajectory of the case. If convicted on federal charges, Mangione could face execution, making his trial one of the most significant federal murder cases in recent history. As the legal battles raged on, another controversy emerged: a massive fundraising effort in Mangione's name. A website allegedly set up by his legal team directed visitors to a crowdfunding campaign that had already raised over $500,000. The donations, coming from across the country and even overseas, highlighted the growing divide in public opinion. Some saw Mangione as a dangerous criminal, while others viewed him as a tragic figure, a man who had taken drastic action against a broken system. But the question remained: was Mangione a cold-blooded killer, or was he a man pushed to the brink by an industry he believed was responsible for countless lives lost due to corporate greed? Legal analysts debated whether the charges against him, especially the terrorism-related first-degree murder charge in New York, were justified. The law required that the murder be committed as an act of terrorism meant to intimidate a civilian population or influence government policy. Did targeting a CEO meet that definition? Prosecutors argued that it did, claiming that the killing was meant to send a message to other executives in the healthcare industry. The defense, on the other hand, argued that Mangione had no history of violence and that there was no evidence to suggest he had intended to create widespread fear. The federal case presented another legal challenge. Mangione was charged with murder in connection with stalking, a charge that required proof that Thompson had been in fear for his life, yet there was no evidence that Thompson even knew he was being followed. This raised questions about whether the federal murder charge would hold up in court. As the trial date loomed, one thing was clear: this was no ordinary murder case. The outcome would not only determine Mangione's fate, but also set a precedent for how high-profile corporate figures were protected and whether violent acts against them could be legally classified as terrorism. The coming months would reveal more about the man at the center of it all. Was Luigi Mangione a vigilante seeking justice, or was he simply a murderer trying to justify his actions? The courtroom would decide, but the public had already begun drawing their own conclusions. And as the case continued to unfold, one thing was certain: this trial was far from over.